No Hartman, no problem. Dave Clawson has led Wake Forest to 7 straight bowl games. And despite losing one of the best quarterbacks in ACC history, he should be able to lead the Demon Deacons to their 8th straight postseason appearance. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad that you could join us today, breaking down the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the country over on our website, guys. One of the lowest priced in the country for the best picks in the country. A full year-long subscription that can guarantee you a winning record, guarantee money right back in your pocket, and the best customer service that any handicapper is going to give you. We're beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 5 years, and we want you to take advantage of that. So go sign up today. If you sign up before the end of August, you will be locked in at the same price next year, so you won't be subject to any price changes. Take advantage of that while you still can. Take a look at our Patreon account as well. Exclusive college football content there year-round. Become a member of our Patreon Wall of Fame. And send us some gear. We'd love to get some Wake Forest gear in our background to be represented in every single Gridiron Expert video. But go take a look at that. The mailing address is down in the description below. Whether you're a Wake Forest fan or whoever your team may be, send us some of your team's gear so we can have them up here all season long. So let's take a look at Wake Forest, guys. I mean, Dave Clawson, I really don't feel like gets nearly enough attention or respect for what he has done with this program. Once kind of at the bottom of the ACC, or typically towards the bottom, he's made them relevant consistently. Not just a flash-in-the-pan, one-hit wonder. It's been consistent. 7 straight bowl appearances within the ACC championship just 2 years ago. Doing phenomenal things over in Winston-Salem, and I think he's going to do it again this year. The offense, guys, averaged 36.1 points per game last year, and yes, we know they do lose Sam Hartman to Notre Dame, which is a huge blow, but Mitch Griffis, I think, is the real deal. This guy had to start the season opener last year against VMI in replacement of Sam Hartman, 258 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. 348 yards, 5 touchdowns on the year in the little bit of time that he had after that season opener. But he's a solid quarterback. He's extremely accurate. I think he's going to be really, really good over the course of his career with the Demon Deacons. You look at who has coming back. They do lose their 1,000-yard receiver in A.T. Perry, but their other top 4 wide receivers and pass catches are back, all of them with over 500 yards receiving last year, led, of course, by Donovan Green. Justice Ellison is back at running back after 707 yards and 6 touchdowns. So you've got a new quarterback coming in that has shown that he can handle the spotlight, shown he can handle a starting role. A lot of dominant pass catchers coming back. A running back with over 700 yards, a solid offensive line. Wake Forest offensively, they might not average 36 points per game again, but they're going to be pretty dang solid. Defensively, that's where they need the most work, right? 6 starters are back after allowing 28.3 points per game last year. And my biggest concern for Wake Forest is the secondary. They were giving up 270 passing yards per game last year. They've got to fix that, and I think they will with 3 starters back in the secondary. Outside of that, 4 of their top 6 tacklers returned, led by Chase Jones at linebacker and Jasheen Davis on the defensive line, led the team with 7 sacks last year. So Wake Forest as a whole should see those defensive numbers improve a little bit. Whether or not that translates to more wins remains to be seen. But you take a look at their schedule, and very well could, because it's favorable. It's not a bad schedule at all. And the month of September, I mean, it's unbelievable. It is so favorable, as a matter of fact, that I think they start 4-0. I think Wake Forest starts the year off 4-0, does not lose a game in the month of September, and technically we're going to group August 31st in with September. They'll beat Elon, they'll beat Vanderbilt, who they beat by 20 last year, now get the Commodores at home. They should cruise past Old Dominion, who only has 7 starters back, coming back this entire year, and they should get a conference win against Georgia Tech at home. These two teams have not met since 2017, and Georgia Tech, guys, their run defense is bad. 189 rushing yards per game. That's what they were allowing last year. This could be a game where Mitch Griffis doesn't have to do too much, and Justice Ellison kind of carries the load. Wake Forest at home is clearly the better team. They should get a conference win. 4-0 heading into their bye week at Clemson. So just like that, you should have a top 25 matchup between the Demon Deacons and Clemson. There's a good chance that Clemson also is undefeated coming into this game, assuming they can get past Florida State early in September as well. It's an intriguing game, though, right? I mean, Wake Forest and Clemson have had, I wouldn't say too many close matchups in recent years, but intriguing games where they've both been highly ranked. They've both been in the hunt for an ACC title in the Atlantic Division. Of course, this year there is no divisions, but a lot at stake here. especially when it comes to ACC championship hopes. Last year, same thing could have been said. And it was an instant classic. Clemson and Wake Forest going to double overtime, but the Tigers winning 51-45. Wake Forest allowing 559 yards of offense to the Tigers. And it should be noted here, guys, I mean, we've seen some good games in years past, but Clemson hasn't lost to Wake Forest since 2008. Or conversely, Wake Forest has not defeated Clemson since 2008. And I don't see them winning this game in Death Valley. A Death Valley where Clemson had won 40 straight home games prior to last year's season finale loss to South Carolina. They're just a different team at home. And Clemson has Cade Klubnik. They've got Will Shipley. They've got Antonio Williams. They've got Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator. They've got one of the best defenses in the country this year, facing off against a good quarterback in Mitch Griffiths, but a young quarterback as well that's going to be facing the most daunting road environment that he's faced as a starter. Just don't see Wake Forest beating Clemson, and I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it that close either. Clemson gets the win. Wake Forest takes their first loss of the year, but then bounces back with the win against Virginia Tech. And someone would say, how are you going to beat Virginia Tech? What about the Clemson hangover? And there is sometimes something to be said for that when you're a team that loses a heartbreaking game to an elite opponent, or maybe you win that game and you have the potential hangover of a letdown spot. But Dave Clawson does a phenomenal job of regrouping his team. If you look at recent years, Wake Forest is 3-2 in games following the Clemson games. So they've lost to Clemson every time, right? Including last year's heartbreaking loss. They've won 3 games following a Clemson loss, and that includes last year's 31-21 win at Florida State, which would have been the prime letdown spot for the Demon Deacons. They didn't let that happen. Dave Clawson didn't let that happen. So I don't really see Wake Forest having a letdown spot at Virginia Tech. I know Blacksburg is not an easy place to play, but the Hokies still have a lot to figure out on both sides of the ball, mostly offensively. And even though Wake Forest defense, especially in the secondary, isn't great, Virginia Tech doesn't have the offense or the quarterback right now to light them up through the air. So they should go on the road, get a good bounce-back win over the Hokies. And I actually think they beat Pittsburgh as well. I think they beat Pittsburgh at home on October 21st, a rematch of the 2021 ACC Championship game, only the second ever regular season matchup between the Panthers and the Demon Deacons, which is pretty wild to think about. But I think home field advantage plays a pretty big role here. I think Wake Forest defends their home field against the Panthers team that, you know, it's kind of interesting to see what to expect from them, right? They got a new quarterback in Phil Jerkerback. They lose Abanikanda at running back. They've got Rodney Hammond coming in now at running back, which is great. He's a solid backup, going to be a solid guy that does well for the Panthers this year. But outside of that, what else can they do offensively? Defensively, always strong under Pat Narduzzi. Their run defense is really, really strong. The secondary going to be a strength as well. But the one thing I am concerned about in the secondary is the fact that Pittsburgh is replacing both of their safeties. I think this is a game where, with home field advantage on their side, Mitch Griffiths actually has himself a pretty big day through the air against his Pittsburgh defense, especially with those 4 pass catchers that we mentioned that are returning for Wake Forest. This is a big aerial attack day for Wake Forest. They get the win over Pittsburgh. They clinch bowl eligibility. They're 6-1. The lone loss to Clemson, probably a top 20, maybe top 15 team at this point. People are talking about maybe Wake Forest contending for a spot in the ACC championship game. Well, then you look at what they have the rest of the way. Look at the final 5 games. Florida State, who won 10 games last year. Duke, who won 9 games last year. And always tough and physical NC State team. A Notre Dame team that is going to challenge for a college football playoff spot this year. And then on the road at Syracuse, who also won 7 games. So we mentioned the favorability of the schedule. Wake Forest could easily clinch bowl eligibility pretty early on. But all their tougher opponents, with the exception of Clemson, are on the back half of that schedule. I do think they lose to Florida State. I know they have had success against the Seminoles. They've won 3 of the last 4. They've won each of the last 2. But Seminoles returned 17 starters, and their offense is just insane. I mean, Wake Forest defensively could improve, but I don't know many defenses are going to be able to slow down Jordan Travis and Trey Benson at running back and Johnny Wilson at wide receiver and Keon Coleman coming back from Michigan State at wide receiver and Jaheim Bell transferring in at tight end from South Carolina. I mean, this is such a good Florida State offense, not to mention their defense only gave up 165 passing yards per game last year, and they returned almost everybody defensively. Seminoles guys are too good. This is the year that they could really, really break out. Last year, 10 wins, ain't bad. Could be even better this year. They beat Wake Forest, take their second loss of the year. Reeling a little bit from that loss, they do fall on the road to Duke. A midweek game, a Thursday night game against the Blue Devils. Those midweek games are never easy to play in, especially if you are the road team. It should be mentioned that Wake Forest lost to the Blue Devils 34-31 last year with Sam Hartman. They allowed 507 yards to Duke, 507 yards of offense to the Blue Devils, and guess what? Duke returns 10 starters. Practically the entire offense is back for the Blue Devils. Riley Leonard returned, all of his wide receivers returned, the running backs returned, and 8 starters are back on defense for the Blue Devils as well. So you pair all that up, plus home field advantage, plus a Thursday night, it just doesn't bode well for Wake Forest, in my opinion. They dropped that game. 3rd loss of the year, definitely out of ACC title contention now, but no one really expected that. With teams like Clemson, Florida State, Pittsburgh even, North Carolina, Miami, guys like that maybe flirting for those spots, Clemson and Florida State definitely at the top. No one's expecting Wake Forest to go in there and contend for a top 2 spot in the ACC. Not at all. Coming off the loss to Duke, they come back home. Keep in mind, only 1 game in the month of November is at home for Wake Forest. That's a tough spot in and of itself too. They do beat NC State. It's an early senior day. You know, the 3rd to last game of the year, and it's senior day. Not the 2nd to last, not the season finale. Pretty early on, they do beat the Wolfpack, though, and I feel pretty confident about that. I know they lost 30-21 to NC State on the road last year. Also, a very long-standing rivalry here. They've played each other every season since 1910, second longest continuous, I should say, streak in college football. The question is, can they stop Brennan Armstrong, the new quarterback at NC State, and can they exploit an NC State defense that has 5 starters back? I'm going to say yes. The secondary for NC State does have a handful of questions. They're going to be strong, but still a handful of questions. Kind of similar to Pittsburgh here. And this is a game where I think with home field advantage and the passing game starting to find its groove, should have found its groove by now, they're able to exploit the Wolfpack just a little bit. And Wake Forest makes just enough plays defensively to slow down what I think is going to actually be a pretty solid NC State run game. Brennan Armstrong, does he return to form from 2 years ago? Does he not? That's going to be the key on whether or not NC State has a big year or not. But they're not coming on the road to win in Winston-Salem, I can tell you that. So Wake Forest beats the Wolfpack. They got 7 wins and clinched a winning season no matter what happens the rest of the way. And that's great because I do think they lose their next 2 games. So they've guaranteed themselves a winning year. They're 7-3, but I think they finished the year at 7-5. Don't see them beating Notre Dame. The Sam Hartman game, so that's going to be exciting. Hartman now with the Fighting Irish facing off against his former team. But you got a Notre Dame team that could be in college football playoff contention at this point, coming off a bye week, at home in South Bend, which is such a difficult place to play. Just don't see Wake Forest having much success there, and I think Sam Hartman's going to love this. Not that they left on bad terms or anything, but would just love to stick it to his former team, and I believe that he does. And then maybe reeling a little bit from that game as well, they face Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. Who's going to have more to play for in this game, right? Who has more to play for? Wake Forest, who's already clinched a bowl game and a winning record, or Syracuse, who very well could be fighting for a bowl spot in the season finale on their senior day? Syracuse, to me, going to have a lot more motivation here. I know Wake Forest won by 10 last year, but the Orange still have a competent quarterback in Garrett Schrader. Rondé Gadsden is one of the better tight ends in the country. The defense should be able to slow down this aerial attack from Wake Forest. It's a matter of stopping Justice Ellison. I believe Dino Baber's squad finds a way to do that. And what should be a close game, Wake Forest falls just short as the Orange, and again, might be fighting for a bowl spot on their senior day. So, all that being said, Wake Forest finishes the year at 7-5. I mean, look, when you lose a historical, generational quarterback, when you lose a 1,000-yard wide receiver, when you lose a handful of starters defensively, and you still find a way to go to a solid bowl game to clinch a winning season, that's a remarkable job by Dave Clawson. No doubt about it. This guy deserves a lot more respect. Wake Forest might not be an ACC elite this year, but they're still a force to be reckoned with. They're still a team you cannot afford to overlook, and they are a team that will be heading to their 8th straight bowl game. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. Don't forget about those expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, our Patreon account for exclusive college football content year-round, and our mailing address. Send up some gear. Let's get some Demon Deacon gear up here, or whoever your team may be. Send it to that mailing address down in the description so we can represent them in every single Gridiron Expert video. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.